My name is Mia. I'm 29 years old, and I live in a small town just outside of Seattle. People say it rains a lot here, but I like the rain. It makes everything feel softer. I work from home. I'm a freelance designer most of the time. I draw simple things: logos, menus, invitations for weddings. It's not exciting, but I enjoy it. I like sitting by the window with a cup of tea, drawing slowly while the rain taps on the glass. My world is quiet, and I love it that way. I've never liked noise, not the kind you hear from the street or the kind people carry in their voices. I enjoy silence. I enjoy stillness. I enjoy slow mornings, warm socks, and soft music in the background. I enjoy peace. My boyfriend Eli understands that. That's why I loved him. Eli is 34. He teaches literature at a local high school. He reads a lot, mostly old books with soft yellow pages. He keeps a notebook in his coat pocket where he writes random thoughts, lines from poems, or dreams he can't explain. He speaks gently, like every word carries weight. We met 5 years ago at a bookstore. I was buying a book on watercolor techniques. He was in the poetry section. We reached for the same book by accident. Our hands touched. We both smiled. That's how it began. We didn't rush anything. We had dinner, then coffee, then more long walks through the park. After a year, we decided to live together. It wasn't dramatic. It just felt right. His things slowly appeared in my apartment: books, jackets, a coffee grinder, and a green mug with a crack on the side. My small world became a little bigger, and I was okay with that. Life with Eli was soft, not perfect, but soft. He made me tea in the morning. I left notes in his lunchbox. We listened to the same jazz album every Sunday while doing laundry. We didn't go out much. We didn't travel far. But we built something, slow and steady, and I believed that was enough. I also had June. June was my best friend. We met in college during an art class. She was studying photography. I was still trying to decide if I wanted to become an artist or just draw for myself. June had this wild energy. She laughed loudly. She wore bold lipstick. She hugged everyone she met. But around me, she became soft too. She understood my quiet. She never forced me to speak when I didn't want to. She would sit beside me, editing her photos while I painted. No words, just presence. And that was enough. She lived a few blocks away and visited often. Sometimes she brought takeout, and we all watched movies together. Me, Eli, and June. They got along well. That made me happy. People used to ask me, "Don't you get bored with such a quiet life?" I always smiled and said no, because it wasn't boring. It was peaceful. It was safe. I thought I had everything I needed: a calm home, a kind partner, a best friend who knew my heart. I didn't ask for much more. I didn't want much more. Sometimes I would wake up in the middle of the night and just lie still, listening to Eli's soft breathing beside me. I'd turn to look at him. He looked peaceful too. I would reach out and hold his hand. He always squeezed mine back, even in his sleep. I used to think, if this is all my life ever becomes, I'll be okay. I truly believed that. I believed in peace. It started with little things, not big arguments, not silence so loud it filled the house, just little things. Eli used to talk about his day, the students he liked, the book he was teaching, how one kid wrote a terrible poem that somehow made him cry. But now dinner feels different. He still sat across from me, still used his same green mug in the morning, still kissed my forehead before leaving. But the words were fewer. His eyes didn't stay with mine for long. He checked his phone more often. Sometimes he smiled while reading something. I asked, "What's funny?" He just said, "Nothing." And it wasn't that he was cold. He wasn't cruel. He still helped me open stubborn jars. I still rubbed my shoulders when I worked too long, but something was off, like a song slightly out of tune. I tried to brush it off. Maybe he was tired. Maybe he was stressed from work. Maybe it was just me overthinking. June had become busier too. She got a photography project that required travel. Still, she dropped by when she could. Sometimes she brought prints to show us, photos of foggy hills, of children playing near the lake, of shadows in the city. She always had stories, and her energy still filled the room like before. But I noticed something new. Sometimes, when Eli spoke, June would look at him longer than before, not in an obvious way, just longer. I couldn't name the feeling. I couldn't say it out loud because there was nothing to say. They weren't doing anything wrong. Still, something inside me tightened. One evening, as I made tea, I heard them laugh in the living room. I paused in the kitchen. Just for a second, their laughter overlapped. Soft, warm, easy. I stepped into the room. They looked up, and for a moment, I thought I saw something pass between them, but it was gone too fast to hold. That night, I painted. I hadn't done it in weeks. The canvas was small. I didn't plan anything. I just let the brush move. When I looked at it after an hour, I saw only dark shapes, grays, deep blues, rough strokes, blurred corners. It looked like a storm seen from underwater. I didn't remember choosing those colors. I placed the brush down, turned off the light, and went to bed. Eli was already asleep. His back was turned. I didn't touch him. The next morning, he said he had a teacher's workshop in another town. 3 days. "Since when?" I asked. He shrugged. "It was last minute. I forgot to tell you." He packed a small bag, kissed me before leaving. His smile was tired, or maybe just polite. I couldn't tell. When the door closed, the apartment felt colder. I wrapped myself in a blanket, though the weather wasn't cold. I tried to work. I tried to draw something cheerful for a wedding client, but everything I drew looked wrong. The flowers looked dead. The font felt too sharp. Even the hearts looked like they were breaking. That evening, I opened my closet and pulled out an old hoodie I hadn't worn in years. It smelled like dust and something familiar. I sat on the floor wearing it, not moving. My phone buzzed. A message from June. Want to grab coffee later this week? I stared at it for a long time. Did she know Eli had left? Was she just being friendly? I didn't answer. I turned off my phone, sat in the dark. It was too soon to name what I felt, too unclear to call it fear or sadness. Something inside me had shifted. I didn't know what it was, but it was there. I told myself not to think too much, but some thoughts don't leave, no matter how quiet you try to be. It was a Thursday when I came home early. The client meeting I had was canceled last minute. I decided not to text Eli. I thought I'd surprise him. We hadn't had lunch together in a while. The sun was low, casting long shadows through the trees. The sky was soft and pale, like a painting before color. When I opened the door, I noticed something right away. The air smelled different, like someone had lit a candle or opened a window to let something in or out. I stepped inside quietly. My shoes didn't make a sound on the wooden floor. I heard voices, soft, too soft, a whisper, a laugh. It was coming from the bedroom. My heart didn't race. It didn't even beat louder. It just stopped listening. I walked slowly down the hallway. Every step felt far away, like it belonged to someone else. The door was half closed. The window in the room was still open. Curtains danced with the wind. And there, through that moving veil of white, I saw them. Eli, June. Her hands were on his shoulders. He was smiling. And just like that, the painting in my mind broke. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't say a word. I stood there, watching. Long enough for them to see me. June turned first. Her eyes grew wide. She stepped back. Eli turned slowly, like he already knew I was there. He didn't say my name. He didn't move. The of us stood in silence. But only I was truly still. I couldn't feel my hands. I couldn't feel my feet. Couldn't feel the floor. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I think I shook my head. I think I blinked. Then I turned. I walked out, closed the door behind me. The wind followed me down the street. I didn't take my phone. I didn't take my bag. I didn't even take my coat. The air was cold, but my skin didn't notice. I walked past the bakery, past the bookstore where we first met, past the cafe where June once spilled her coffee. She laughed so hard we couldn't breathe. Each place felt like a photograph that had been burned around the edges. I didn't go to my mother's house. I didn't go to June's apartment. I walked until I reached the lake. There was no one there, just the sound of water and birds that didn't know anything had changed. I sat on a bench, and for a long time, I stared at the water. I tried to cry. I really did, but the tears stayed stuck somewhere deep, hidden under too many layers. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the last time Eli looked at me and really saw me. I couldn't. I tried to remember the last time June hugged me and meant it. I couldn't. I opened my eyes. The wind had picked up. The sky had darkened. I walked back home slowly, my legs heavy like wet paper. When I reached the apartment, I stood at the door for a long time. I didn't want to go in, not because I was angry, not because I was sad, but because I didn't know who I was when I walked out, and I didn't know who I'd be if I walked back in. Still, I opened the door. The bedroom was empty. The window was still open. A cold breeze moved through the space where something warm used to live. On the bed, there was a folded piece of paper, my name on it, in Eli's handwriting, but I didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, I sat down at the edge of the bed. I looked at the painting I had made days ago. Dark shapes, deep blues, heavy strokes. I finally understood what I had painted. It wasn't a storm. It was silent, the kind that comes after truth, the kind that stays. The days after felt like a long, gray road with no signs. I moved, but I wasn't sure where I was going. I woke up, I made tea, I sat at the table and stared at nothing. Then I went back to bed. Eli didn't come home that night or the next. I didn't open the note. I kept it in the drawer next to my bed, like a question I wasn't ready to answer. Sometimes I touched it with my fingers, but never unfolded it. June didn't call. She didn't text again. Her silence was louder than anything she could have said. And maybe that was the worst part. How easy it was for both of them to disappear. I stopped drawing. My hands felt heavy, like they didn't belong to me. The blank pages on my desk stayed blank. The pencils stayed sharp. The brushes stayed dry. I stopped playing music. The apartment became too quiet, and yet I couldn't stand the sound of anything that tried to fill it. I ate little, slept too much, or not at all. The night was the hardest. That's when the questions came. Was I blind? Had I been pretending? Was there a moment, a single moment, where I could have stopped it from happening? But no answer ever came. Instead, my mind wandered back to memories I once loved but now felt different. I remembered the night Eli brought me soup when I had the flu. He sat beside the bed, read poetry to me while I slept. I thought it was love. Maybe it still was. But now I wondered, did he also read poems to her? I remembered the time June and I spent a whole Sunday baking cookies, laughing until our stomachs hurt. She said, "You and Eli are perfect. You're like a calm river." Did she mean it? Or was she already floating in that river herself? I remembered a moment months ago when Eli came home late and June had left just before. I asked where he'd been. He said, helping a student. I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Trust isn't loud. It's quiet. So quiet you don't Notice when it starts to disappear. I thought of calling my mother, but what would I say? That I lost two people I loved in one day? That the silence they left behind was louder than their presence? So I stayed in the apartment. I started writing letters I never sent. One to Eli, one to June, one to myself. In the letter to Eli, I wrote, I don't hate you, but I don't know you anymore. Maybe I never really did. In the letter to June, I wrote, you were my second home. You made me feel seen, and now I feel invisible. In the letter to myself, I wrote, you are still here. That's enough for now. I burned the letters in the sink, watched the paper curl and turn to ash. It didn't fix anything, but it made the air feel a little clearer. One morning, I found myself standing in front of my closet. I pulled out a yellow dress I hadn't worn in years. It didn't fit right, but I wore it anyway. I went outside just to walk around the block. Nothing big. But the sun was out and the breeze was kind. A neighbor waved. I waved back. My legs felt shaky, but I kept walking. When I returned, I sat by the window. I watched the world move. People walking dogs, kids riding bikes, leaves falling slowly from the trees. I thought about peace, how I once believed it meant stillness, silence, softness. But maybe peace isn't always quiet. Maybe peace is just being able to sit with pain and not run from it. I looked at the drawer beside my bed. The note was still there. I didn't open it, not yet. But this time, I didn't avoid it either. Let it be what it was, a part of the story, not the whole thing. It didn't happen all at once. Healing isn't a moment. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's small, quiet, like a leaf turning in the wind, like a whisper finally heard. One morning, I woke up before the sun. The sky outside was a soft gray, the kind that promises rain but gives you light instead. I stretched my arms, and for the first time in weeks, my body didn't feel heavy. I made tea. I stood by the window while the water boiled and watched the world slowly come alive. A man walked his dog. A woman pushed a stroller. A bird landed on the railing and tilted its head like it was listening. I took a sip of tea and thought, maybe today I'll go somewhere. I didn't have a plan, but I got dressed anyway. I chose jeans and an old sweater that smelled like lavender. I tied my hair back. I opened the drawer. The note was still there. I looked at it. I held it in my hand. Then, without opening it, I placed it inside a box and taped it shut. I wrote nothing on the box. I just slid it under the bed. Then I picked up my bag and walked out. I didn't go far, just to the old bookstore downtown, the one where I met Eli. I hadn't stepped inside since that day. The bell over the door still made the same soft sound. The smell of old pages wrapped around me like an old song. I walked slowly between the shelves. I wasn't looking for anything. But then I saw it on a small table near the back, a poetry book, the same one he had reached for when our hands first touched. I picked it up. I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel angry. I felt still. I opened the book and flipped through the pages. One line caught my eye. I am not broken. I am in bloom. I read it again and again and again. Tears came, not loud, just soft ones, rolling down slowly, like they had been waiting. I bought the book. As I walked home, the clouds opened just enough to let the sun touch my face. It wasn't warm, but it was there. When I got back, I sat at my desk, the same desk that had waited for me every day. I picked up a pencil. I didn't try to draw perfectly. I didn't plan. I just let my hand move. Lines turned into shapes, shapes into something soft, something alive. Hours passed without me noticing, and when I finally looked at the page, I saw a girl. She was standing in the rain, but she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. Her face was tilted upward, eyes closed, mouth open like she was laughing or singing. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was someone I hadn't become yet. Maybe it didn't matter. I looked around my apartment. It was still the same place, but something felt different. It wasn't just the silence. It was the space inside me that had grown. That night, I called a friend I hadn't spoken to in a while. We talked for hours. I laughed, really laughed. I hadn't heard that sound in a long time, and it startled me in the best way. Before bed, I opened the window. I stood there for a while, breathing in the night air. It smelled like earth, like endings and beginnings, all at once. And in the quiet I spoke, just one word, my name, Mia. I said it out loud, not to anyone, just to remind myself I was still here, that I had survived, that I had returned. Maybe not as the same person, but as someone honest, someone whole, someone ready.